everyone. This is Coach Kat, and welcome to today's live training with Roundtable Breakout Sessions, where you get brand new real-time trainings from Heather and our team. Now it's my distinct pleasure to hand it over to Heather Dominick, founder of businessmiracles.com, who since 2010 has been training highly sensitive entrepreneurs and leaders from around the globe to work less while making more impact and more income by doing things differently. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Coach Kat. We are here together today to focus in on the topic of using self-assessment to make intuitively discerned actions. And as always, that's added in the chat for you. And as always, key points from this weekly training roundtable will also continuously be added in the chat for you, especially for those of you who tend to be more visual learners. I'm so excited about this topic as a follow-up from the last two weekly training roundtables, bringing us back 2 weeks ago, where we were focusing in on personal responsibility and a bit of a mind shift, a reframe, personal responsibility as the ability to respond. And as you are honing your HSP strengths, and particularly intuition, this gives you greater access to that ability to respond from a place of nervous system calm and from a place of that HSP strength of intuition. Beautifully followed by the amazing weekly training roundtable led by Coach Lorna last week. Round of applause, shall we? An incredible weekly training roundtable working with the entire community through the process of using the tool of self-assessment. Just a reminder that the 3 key questions as part of the self-assessment tool are: number 1, what worked well? Number 2, what did not work so well? And number 3, what will I do differently based on what I have learned from the above 2 questions? This is an incredibly powerful and important HSP business leadership tool, self-assessment. As Coach Kat mentioned, it is interwoven through everything that we do as a Business Miracles team, including we self-assess every weekly training roundtable, every single one, immediately following each weekly training roundtable. That's just one of the ways that we use the self-assessment tool in service to consistent improvement and up-leveling. It is the consistency of using the self-assessment tool that reduces overwhelm for a coach team of HSPs. If we were not using weekly self-assessment as part of our weekly training roundtable facilitation, 1, it would be so easy for things that need to be improved to be missed. 2, it would be so easy for those improvements to pile up until it feels too much, too overwhelming of a change to make, even monthly, or goodness gracious, quarterly, or God forbid, annually. The fact that we are using self-assessment consistently then allows us, for when we do come together annually for team planning, as we did last week, to take the power of self-assessment to an even more refined level, all in the name of being able to improve consistently how we are in service to each of you as HSPs in business and leadership in the Highly Sensitive Leadership Training Program. Now, we are going to be going into roundtables today. However, I would like to hear from some of you right now before we go into roundtables. And this is the reason why. Most importantly, as I've been reviewing posts on the forum, I have been really seeing some incredible insights, some incredible inspirations, some incredible ideas, and just overall breakthroughs that are happening within the community because of the last 2 weekly training roundtables. That combination of respondability with the incentive to use the self-assessment tool. So, anyone who has an idea, an insight, an inspiration that has been received as a result of the last 2 weeks of training roundtables, please raise your digital hand. I'd like to hear from at least 3 members just sharing. Maybe, again, ideas that you've had around not marketing like an 80%er, or wanting to be calm but not acting calmly, or judging yourself during self-assessment versus doing them with curiosity to learn and grow. Anything that has come into your awareness so that we can just open the conversation, moving the conversation off the forum and into the container of our weekly training roundtables, and to support us in getting ready going into roundtables for today. Because we are in full community, I am going to ask for a brief introduction. So please just write this down if it's helpful for you to share, to remember to be able to share. If you'll please, as part of your introduction, share your name, where you're zooming in from today, and which level of leadership training program you are currently in. That would sound something like, if you are a new member, you are likely in the foundation program. If you are a member who receives quarterly check-in calls with various members of the Business Miracles coach team, then likely you are in the core training program. If you have regular one-on-one calls with a member of the Business Miracles coach team on a monthly basis, then you are in the Plus program. And if you are working in monthly cohort mentoring sessions with me, then you are in the Plus program. So your name, where you're zooming in from, and the program level. Beautiful. Michael, start us off. Introduction and ideas, insights, inspirations from respondability and self-assessment.
Michael Sherlock, calling in from Houston. I'm in the HSL++ relationship track. Something really big awareness for me, as many of you know, I'm really working on consistency with my 4Q weekly focus and update each week. And I've been consistent since the beginning of this plan with that happening every Monday. And this Monday I woke up and I was ill. And at some point in time, in between the second and third naps, I sat down at my desk because I'm like, damn it, Sherlock, it's time. You've got to do this. You always do your energy management. You always do your weekly focus. And then I was like, well, I need to take nap number 3. So I took care of my body because I was asking myself, what's better? Kind of like the mental self-assessment. Well, what's working well? Doing it every week has worked well. What's not working so well right now is I don't feel good. But asking myself what I would have done before, I would have probably just plugged along through this week and not done a weekly focus. And so I gave myself grace on Monday for being ill. And then when I got back yesterday and I was feeling 80% better, I said, what will I do differently today? Because I was that close to just like, well, let's just slide into the day. And I'm like, no, let's do this. And I did the process and I felt really good about it. And what it came through to me was be more gentle with myself this week. Instead of trying to cram in everything after making myself sick one day, be more gentle. And that's the first time I've ever done a weekly focus from the perspective of take care of myself based on what I was doing and feeling on Monday.
This is amazing. Thank you so much. This is exactly why I wanted to hear ideas and insights and inspirations around the actual practical real-time use of the self-assessment tool. So there's a few things I'd like to highlight from Michael's share. So the first thing that I want to highlight is how she's been using self-assessment consistently as a weekly core practice. So that's number one, right? And Lorna spoke to that last week as part of the process of intuitive planning, to incorporate self-assessment to allow that process to be easier for you. The second thing that I'm hearing from Michael's share is that this was an exceptional week. And because of her previous core practice of using the self-assessment tool weekly, she was able to catch herself in the process of a previous pattern. So it's what I like to refer to as a pattern interrupt. And I'm going to invite you to write that down. Pattern interrupt, because that's what self-assessment really affords us. And the pattern interrupt that you heard Michael describe is that previously she would have gone into the HSP coping mechanism of pushing. Now, what I also heard is that she didn't just go into the HSP coping mechanism of hiding. So now those of you who tend towards the pushing coping mechanism, you will just plow through, which you heard Michael speak to, she would have done in the past. Those of you who tend towards the hiding coping mechanism, the minute you don't feel well, and this connects to our upcoming masterclass mastermind, the minute you don't feel well, that becomes a reason to not take action. Oh, I have to take care of myself. This is in the name of self-care. I have to make sure that my body is well before I can do anything else. Now, there's not anything wrong with any of those reasons, but it is the way that they are being used. And what you heard Michael model is a both and. So she shifted from the weekly self-assessment into daily self-assessment and used that to support herself in staying out of pushing, but also not going into hiding and adjusting, adapting the way that she was working through an exceptional week. This is gold here, people. Right? And that is the value of, again, self-assessment. That is a pattern interrupt. That is a coping mechanism interrupt. And that is the way that true change occurs. And of course, this will impact not only this week for Michael, but also how she continues to use self-assessment and also how she continues to interrupt that coping mechanism tendency. And again, I'm really going to emphasize and highlight the rationalization that tends to come around the coping mechanisms for us HSPs, usually sounding something like, but you don't understand. Whether the you don't understand is internal conversation or also external conversation, meaning only with yourself versus also with others. So absolutely beautiful and brilliant. Thank you so much, Michael. We bow to you. And this again is exactly why I wanted to open up for ideas, insights, and inspirations specifically connected to respondability and the actual real-time use of the self-assessment tool. Amazing. Thank you. Stacy, introduction and idea, insight, inspiration from respondability and self-assessment.
I'm in the foundation program and I was writing so much down, I kind of lost my thought, what I wanted to say. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about, I have offered a couple of circles the last 2 weeks. And after yesterday's circle that I thought I was so prepared for, and I had done an OFTU on ahead of time, the circle was fine, but it wasn't quite as focused or as it just didn't feel like I did the best job that I could have. So I stepped away from it. And even though I'm in foundation, I am an old member of the program. So I had remembered the whole self-assessment piece and I remembered the 3 questions. So I literally just like turned off the Zoom. I sat in my chair and I said, just stop for a minute and let's go through, what did I do well? And I was so happy to start with that question because there wasn't a whole lot that I felt went really well. So I was like, well, I had a cool setup. The cards looked really cool on the table. I did do an OFTU. I kind of didn't follow through on it as much as I would have liked to. And then I started moving into, what didn't go so well. But what I want to highlight is that I think I did a nice job of just doing it immediately rather than potentially spinning into like that sucked and oh my gosh, and going into like a shame cycle and like, why am I even going to offer it next week? Like maybe I should move on to something different, abandon ship, go somewhere else. I just like stayed with myself and was like, okay, well, I'm offering another one next week. So maybe I can even get feedback from the women that were there and say like, hey, what worked for you? What would you like to see for next week? So I want to, yeah, I think I did the both and, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. Really, really amazing, gorgeous, beautiful Stacy. Thank you so much for sharing again this real-time example, similar as with Michael. Just a few things that I'd really like to highlight from Stacy's share. So again, Stacy is describing a pattern interrupt. And she's describing how self-assessment as a tool supported her with that pattern interrupt. And she is speaking to a pattern that is not in any way unique to Stacy. It is so common for us HSPs, and that is the pattern of beating up on one's self. So she could intuitively feel that things didn't go as well as she would have liked. Now, the HSP shadow tendency is that when we have that feeling, and we are often very intuitively on point, but instead of using it from a strength perspective, we tend to spin out in the shadow perspective, just really spinning down into all the things that didn't work well. So what Stacy really spoke to is that she turned to the self-assessment tool immediately. Now, if I have done that one time, I have literally done that a billion times in my self-employed career. And by using the self-assessment tool as it is designed, which is to start with what worked well. And yeah, it might seem like little things, but even as I was just listening to Stacy, I was like, Zoom worked for you. Sounds like you were able to do the entire circle. That's amazing. That's incredible. That's a miracle. Definitely didn't even have that 10 years ago. So that worked really well, right? And the brain, the mind, the head brain starts to then become coherent with the heart brain, and you're taking into consideration things that worked well that you are so easily able to dismiss without using the self-assessment tool. As in like, oh yeah, whatever, we were on Zoom. What? No, that's an incredible miracle. And it was on the edge of Mercury retrograde. So double worked well. Amazing. To then be able to suss out and start to then divide of like, okay, that didn't work so well. And maybe you do hop back and forth between them a little bit, especially when it's so hot and you're immediately after using the self-assessment tool, immediately after an experience. And Stacy didn't label it or identify it, but I'm going to highlight that the tool led her to a do differently. And what she spoke to as a do differently was to check in with the women, what their experience was, receive feedback. And I'll tell you what, without that self-assessment tool and going into that HSP shadow of beating up on self, right, into the shame spiral, the shame shields, as you heard Stacy speak to, or going into the coping mechanisms, you're not going to come up with creative do differently ideas. You're not going to enter in a space to be willing to actually receive feedback. No, you're going to go into HSP isolation and think that if you just take one more course, then next time you'll get that facilitation of that circle right. No, use self-assessment tool, make a shift immediately and move into action. Gorgeous, brilliant, absolutely. Well done. Thank you so much, Stacy. Agreed, Coach Kat, a business miracle. Yes. I know we have a few hands up. I'm going to take one more just for time's sake because I do want us to be able to go into roundtables, and I want to lead you through a little something to support shifting into roundtables. So Stephanie, introduction, idea, insight, inspiration regarding respondability and self-assessment.
Stephanie Bonte-LeBaire, Gaithersburg, Maryland, HSL++ marketing track. Two big things. I've been doing assessment for a really long time consistently, as Heather knows. And two things really stood out to me recently is one, my assessment ability has allowed me to make a lot of decisions, especially for things that require a lot of decisions, like the decision-making process is faster and easier because of assessment. And what I also noticed, I went and reread my assessment for my big event last Thursday, and I realized I was putting celebrations in the what didn't work. I like started off with what didn't work and then I went back into celebrations again. And that was the other thing that's been happening is I've been finding it a lot easier to celebrate. Like I'm seeing all the positive things much more clearly, which
Yes.
allows me to stay out of that spiral.
Yes, which then gives you access to the decision making, right? Because you're not using all of your mental, emotional, physical, nervous system energy spinning out into overwhelm or beating up on self or that shame spiral like we spoke about with Stacy. I love that, Stephanie, that even in your what didn't work well, just still celebrating. Amazing. So one thing that Stephanie spoke to highlights something that I'd like to share when it comes to that decision-making process. So I get asked a lot, how is it, Heather, that you can so consistently be creating new content? So let me just take a minute and highlight that these weekly training roundtables are created in real time every week based on previous week's assessment as a team and what we are seeing happening within the community, as well as very much so now within the world, all to support each of you and all of us as a Business Miracles community to remain strong, steady, and consistent with income generation. So these weekly training roundtables created in real time from scratch every week. Also, every single intuitive planning day, every 4 months, I create completely new, really tapping in to what's going on in the zeitgeist, what's going on in the world, what's going on in this community to deliver a never before received content every 4 months in an intuitive planning day. Also, for those who choose to attend in-person training, a quantum leap training, an acceleration retreat training, a quantum leap training, quantum leap retreat. All new and designed content created for those particular members who are attending. How do I do that? Oh, I must be pushing. I must be burning the midnight oil. I must be drinking Red Bull behind the scenes and not telling anybody in the community about it. No, I am using assessment and actually trusting in what I'm seeing and allowing that to spark my intuition and working off of what needs to be done differently. What needs to be done differently for this community this week? What needs to be done differently for the community in the next 4 months? What needs to be done differently for these particular attendees of a quantum leap training? These particular Business Miracles attendees for an acceleration retreat? These particular attendees for a quantum leap retreat? That is how. So here's what's so fascinating and interesting to me, especially coming off of just hearing these incredible ideas and insights and inspirations from Michael and Stacy and Stephanie. There are still so many of you that resist self-assessment. It's like, oh, who has time for self-assessment? Oh, don't want to self-assess. Or you come to the forum with an ask, always come to the forum with an ask, yet when a team member checks in with you, oh, have you self-assessed this? No, I've not self-assessed this. Well, I'll tell you this, an ask on the forum would be so much more potent and powerful if it was coming off as a result of self-assessment. It would help us fast track and move you along that much more quickly. So before we go into roundtable, hand on heart, take a breath in and let it out. Close your eyes if that's helpful and supportive, bringing you into that space, heart connection and intuition, overriding intellect only in this moment here and now. And from this connected space, what is a question or more than one question that you have about how to use self-assessment as a consistent core practice. Other than that, leaving you with many blessings, business miracles. See you in all the ways that I will see you. Stay for Afterglow, and until next time.